Have you ever found yourself in a rut? Perhaps you're in one right now. If that's the case, this video is made specially for you. And even if you're not in a rut right now, I invite you to watch or save this video because it will be handy. I am going to share with you something really simple yet profound that I heard recently that was like the insight I needed to receive to help shift me out of the rut that I have been in. But stay with me because I'm also going to bring in a little bit more of what's behind and within a rut experience that is available, the opportunity for insight and for growth and for healing that's in these kinds of situations that we find ourselves in our life, and how much wisdom can be gained from that, not only to propel ourselves, but also perhaps not to revisit it again because we will go through it in a conscious way. So the saying that I heard was, if it's a negative question, then there will be negative answers. Now, that might sound really simplistic, and I am really grateful that I happened to be watching a video where this was part of what somebody was sharing. What it spoke to me, because I've been struggling in this place within my own life of feeling stuck and having all these skills and not being able to like move it or feel like I was moving it. And of course, just like anyone, when you're in those uncomfortable places, we really want to get out of them. The ego wants to move out of them. So there's resistance, there's all kinds of opportunity there. But I was also really being conscious about, what am I here to learn? What's here for me? And sometimes we don't step out until we're ready. And I really believe on some level, I was open for that readiness. And I happened to hear this because we can hear things all the time, but if they're not like computing, it's because we're really not ready to receive them. But when I heard this statement, when the question is negative, the answer is negative. What's available in that and what I heard was that, what spirit are we moving from? If we're in those places and we're feeling whatever we might be feeling, if we're trying to solve it from that energy, it's really difficult to create anything else. It's like attracts like. So if you find yourself in a situation where you're struggling or you feel stuck or you feel like you're in a rut or you're in pain or whatever it might be for you, and there's value in that. And stay with me because I'm going to share with you a couple pieces here that will be really valuable for you when if you're in that place or when you're in that place, because oftentimes we go through these things on our own. And because of how we tend to be socialized, we don't share a lot of what we're going through. And that can become really lonely. What I found really helpful in hearing that was just the power in that reminder of like, what what is the energy that I'm moving from? What is the spirit of which I'm asking questions? Where is my mindset? How am I resting in it? And if I'm resting in a place that is stuck in anger or resentment or frustration or negativity, it's going to be really difficult to see anything different than that same kind of energy. And you might be relating to this right now, right? I mean, we're human. We all have all these kinds of experiences and emotions and feelings, but we're often not always aware of how we are just creating more of the same because we're living a life and we're busy. And unless you're somebody that's taking the time to really look at what's going on with yourself, you may not recognize that this is exactly what you're looping on. So the next thing I want to share is that when you are in a situation like a rut or where you feel stuck or where you just like you often it comes up as like you don't have clarity and you want clarity and you want answers. And there's also advice that will say like take action, and answers come from clarity, comes from the action, and I totally support that. What is available though when you are in a situation like where you feel stuck or you're in a rut is there is healing available there. There's opportunity, there's unexpressed whatever, feelings, emotions, thoughts, ideas. And that is a greater opportunity for you to get to know yourself better, but to also leverage that, to use that opportunity that is happening right now in your life to learn from it, to grow from it, to track the learnings, and to be mindful that you don't try to bypass it or steamroll over it or medicate it. Because those are all things that are very common in society, especially if you are not paying attention or you don't feel equipped or you just feel busy and you feel like you can't. And if you are a high achieving, high producing woman, you have relied on your intellect and your mind and your experience to make a lot of stuff happen. And so when you are confronted with this kind of a place inside yourself, you can't always use those tools, not initially. That comes when you're ready to create the strategy or the plan, but that does not meet feeling and emotion. And that's what's present. That's what's usually underneath that's available. So the opportunity is to consider, like, is there grief or sadness or disappointment or fear or anger, resentment? Whatever is going on in your life, it's likely been exacerbated or initiated or kicked off by something that's been going on in your life. It might be a relationship, it might be a situation that you're in. You might be feeling like it's part of being burnt out or exhausted, and that will likely be what's, putting it on steroids, but that's not usually the source. The source is something bigger. The source is that there's a part of your own divine intelligence that's wanting to create something different, that doesn't want to keep looping on whatever it is. And now it's showing up as feeling like you're in this rut or like you're stuck and you don't know what to do. And that is really difficult for the ego to metabolize, especially if you are a high achieving woman, because you're used to being successful and figuring things out. What I want to share and why that statement of if it's a negative question, the answer will be negative. I don't know that I would have received that or heard that a month ago when I was just kind of stepping into this place, because I had a lot of stuff to work through. I had feelings, I had disappointment, I had what I was just offering that needed to come up. And so my invitation to you is don't skip that. Not only is that what sickness and dis-ease is made of, is like repressed, unexpressed feeling and emotion, things that haven't not been able to have a voice and come up and get resolved. But it's also just an opportunity for you to get to know yourself better, to become a little bit more self-actualized, self-realized, to be honoring and respectful of your human experience. Ways that you can do that is to write about it, to speak about it, it could be sharing it with somebody that you trust. It could be therapy. It could be a coach. It could be writing and journaling. It could be going to the top of a mountain that is deserted and screaming, like whatever's there. Because a rut is literally like the outcome of unconscious that's trying to come up as conscious or repressed feeling and emotion that has not been dealt with. So that's the opportunity. That's the greater opportunity. And I'm creating this video to share this because, like I said earlier, most of us are not taught how we kind of become who we are and what's happening. So unless you spend a lot of time in that, unless you do this work as a professional yourself, or you've done a lot of this work, and even then, like, these are like my areas of genius, but when we're in it, we got to walk the steps ourselves. So I'm just encouraging and inviting the opportunity for expressing it, for feeling it, for allowing it, and for not trying to push your way through and rush it. So I wanted to offer that. I wrote a note here, get it out. There's such power in that, in the opportunity of allowing it to basically be heard. Be heard. Stay with me for a moment because I do have a stream of consciousness, and it is my full intention to stay clear on what it is I'm trying to emit here in this video. But sometimes these nuggets come forward and I want to honor them. And one of the biggest challenges that people feel, and I do believe women feel, is not being seen and heard, not being feeling valued in that way. And it really is about being seen and heard. Well, it's really difficult to create that in our world if we are not seeing and hearing ourselves. So I'll just drop that little one there for your awareness, but hopefully that will like shine a light on the power of giving yourself the opportunity to feel it. And I encourage you to get support. If you're not somebody who feels really comfortable with that, if you're somebody who doesn't really know how to do that, or you feel a little bit like resistant, then I encourage you to seek some support. And that could even just be a friend that you know is really good at it. The next note I have here is that, and this is something that I just went through myself. So I'll share with you a little bit of my own story. There is under a rut or a shift in our life, like that's an opportunity for growth, as I mentioned. And there are situational things, there are things that are available in that to heal, to look at, to resolve, to address, essentially. And it usually involves other things, but it's really all about you and your own relationship, which is why I was talking about the power of feeling it and going through that, and how growth and greater intimacy can come from that. So there is that own kind of inner confrontation. The other piece, there is a deeper cut. And that is that it's usually linked to something, or it's supporting, revealing something that's deeper. Because often when we get triggered about something, it's not usually that situation that's happening right there. It's that it's related to something that's not resolved, a judgment you're not aware that you're carrying, pain. Triggers are coming from things that precipitated every environment. Because if you did not already have a feeling or an idea or a belief or a value that this is now confronting, you wouldn't feel it. It wouldn't be a trigger. So there's always something deeper. For example, without going into the whole story, one of the key pieces of the rut that I'm in is the opportunity to shift my business and to accept that despite my effort and all that I've been pouring in, the devotion, the learning, and everything, that it was not mirroring to me, not just the results, but the experience that I intended for this business. And I was attached to the path. I was attached because I've put so much into it. And I found myself, it took me a minute because I guess I could be pretty stubborn to see that I just didn't want to let it go. I wanted to figure it out, but that was not working. And I kept being confronted with it. So that was my opportunity to see. And I was holding a judgment in the word of feeling unsuccessful. And we're not always successful. But I was internalizing that. I was judging myself for that. I was feeling very disappointed. And all of that took me a minute to see and to figure out. And it came through some of that processing and discussing and some of that inner work that I mentioned. But recently I was on a trip, and I shared this more in another video that I will link. And essentially what happened is I had this awareness of this emotion coming on, and I was able to surface something that's linked to my relationship with my mother, who passed away almost 2 years ago. And the unconscious decision I made around how I related to her and how I wanted her to be happier, and some decision I made as a little girl that was part of my mission, of which I felt unsuccessful. And to be honest, there's definitely probably some more processing in there for me because this has all just kind of been coming together. But my point in sharing that is that often, whatever you're going through, it's what's happening right now. And there's almost always something deeper available. And one of my teachers said, and this was always very helpful for me, is that at where I did a lot of my master's work, is that we don't go digging in the unconscious because it's there for a reason. And it comes up when it's ready. And what I mean by that, and why I'm highlighting that, is that I'm not saying go digging for the deeper meaning, but if you're open to that, or if something is coming up and you're wondering, why is that coming up? It's because some part of your psyche is mirroring it and showing it to you as an offering for healing. And what is through healing is freedom. I wanted to share that, and I wanted to give a little bit of context and share a little bit of my own personal example. One of the main purposes of my presence here and the messages that I'm sharing, the different skills and ideas that I'm bringing forward, what's the manifesto, if you will, underneath that is heal your part. My experience of this life that we're all living in is that we are not equipped. We have not been taught how we become who we are and what's going on inside of us. We have to go somewhere and get a diagnosis, et cetera, et cetera. It's just something that's not in our everyday skill set that I believe is a real disservice to humanity. But it's also my way of shining a light on the value and the opportunity of healing and not to be afraid of it, not to think that it's bigger than you or that it's something that you can't actually find within your life, but also to recognize that you're part of a collective. You're part of not just your communities and your circles, but you're part of the greater collective. And when you heal your part, even one situation, you are uplifting the vibration of yourself and everything that you touch. So it's a really powerful thing to not just address and get yourself out of that rut, but it's also a really beautiful thing to be a part of adding to the healing collective, which is very much, I think you probably would agree, a great opportunity in society today. So I just offer that for your consideration. I do have a podcast that is called Heal Your Part. It's something that you will see again. And if you're new to me, my name is Jennifer. I'm here every day to remind you that your truth is your power. Trust yourself, and your life will transform. I'll see you tomorrow.